All right, here we go. Back on the Gill Athletics Connections podcast. So glad that you pressed play today. I think you're going to enjoy this one. So humbled that you would join us here as we continue to uplift and honor coaches from around the country. And today we're going to go over to Ohio. So help me welcome the head coach of the University of Cincinnati, the wise, the wonderful Miss Susan Seaton. Susan, how are you today?
Good. I'm really good. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I appreciate this. You and I get to see each other about twice a year at nationals every year. And we get to say hi. And you're always someone that I was like, I need to know more about her story. So I've had you on my list for a while, and I'm so glad you're able to join us.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. So let's get into it, Susan. If you think about like your origin story, Spider-Man was bitten by a spider. Or Peter Parker was bitten by a
That's
spider. That's how.
exactly it right there.
That's it.
That's,
I had some track coach bit you and you became a track coach. That's awesome.
yeah, exactly.
That needs to be turned
Oh,
into a movie.
be good.
That's right. As we think about your origin, where does track and track coaching, where does it start for you?
Yeah, so I think being German, and I actually grew up in East Germany. Some of my friends know that my journey was a little different from most of the coaches over here. I started out in my hometown being selected to be in track and field at a young age at 7, because we have little city championships where all the kids participate, and it's very simple. You just do, I think it was 60 meters long jump and throwing a ball, something like that. And they paid attention, and they selected the kids that showed some talent to join the local training center or club. And the East German government paid for the coaches there and paid for some of the structure, and your parents didn't really have to do much other than just make sure you got there. So yeah, I started at 7, and developed through the East German system. So you go to your local club until you're about 12, 13, and then the next selection process would start, where each state in East Germany, we had 15 states, had a training center, Olympic training center, where they would have several Olympic sports that were, housed in boarding schools. And, you had a little campus with athletic facilities and coaches and teachers and dorms and, dining halls and all that stuff. And that's where really all the magic happened. That's where the younger kids went. And the older athletes, our world-class athletes, would also be training there with different coaches. So on a daily basis would see your world-class athletes training, maybe at slightly different times, but they certainly would be on site. And the coaches that work with the top level athletes would always, see the younger kids, develop and train. So everybody was aware of each other. And so that's where I went from 8th grade to 10th grade, so 3 years. And that was a very enlightening experience. 13 practice sessions a week. Before that, I'd done one each day, and usually just Monday through Friday. And so no lifting up to that point. And then we went there, and you had 13 training sessions, including Saturdays. And then on the weekends, we would be able to go home for a little bit, Saturday afternoon, Sunday, and we'd be able to see our parents. And yeah, so that's kind of how I grew up. And I ended up as a younger kid competing in a lot of different events. You're little, so you don't know yet what you're going to be good at. So I did hurdles, high jump, running relays, 800s, cross country in the fall and the spring, just all of it. And then when it came to selection for the training center, it was called Youth Training. Yeah, Youth Training Center and Olympic Training Center for several different sports. The coaches there decided they wanted me to be a javelin thrower. So that's at 13, 14, I started specializing in javelin. And then while I was there, one of the older coaches there, one of the head coaches, decided that she saw something in me that would lead me towards coaching, and said, I want you to help out with your group and with some of our younger groups. So when I was in 10th grade, I got disqualified out of the system because my knees were not holding up with this training. And when you have too many injuries or like chronic injuries, they kind of cycle you out because they spend a lot of money on it. So they kind of said, hey, we want you to stop training at this level, of course, still stay active, but we want you to start helping out. And so this is 10th grade we're talking.
So pause there, because I want to get,
Yeah.
I like that transition of we're going into coaching, but I'm curious because this is, I've always heard of East German and other countries that did it like this, of like you tried out for different sports and then they selected you for the sport. So it doesn't sound like you had a lot of choice. Like if maybe you enjoyed basketball, but they're like, yeah, no, you're more suited for track. Where here in the States, it's much more, if I like to play baseball, I play baseball until maybe I'm not good enough at the level, as we go up. When you compare those two, because you've seen both, living here in the States, how it goes with youth here, and you grew up in a different way of doing it. Advantages, disadvantages to either way?
Well, I think for me, I'm trying to tell my path, but my mom put me in gymnastics first, when I was 6, 7. So for a little while, I was doing gymnastics, which I think is a great sport for anyone to really get started.
Absolutely.
And they eventually told me I was gonna be too tall for gymnastics. I'm 5'8", so they were like, you should find another sport, because it was really interesting that everything was somewhat aimed towards that elite level. How can we get you to that elite level? And participation was not okay, but you knew that there were expectations even at that young age. So, they politely said, hey, it's been fun, good job helping out with the gymnastics club, but you're one of the 3 tall ones, we're gonna let you guys go.
So, I like that, very politely. Hey, we had a lot of fun, but it's time to go move to a tall person.
And you're like, sport. I mean, you're 6, 7 years old, right? So think about that.
You're 6, you're like, I just want to be with my friends.
I don't fit the mold. Let me find something else.
That is funny, yeah.
So what they actually did, maybe to explain this a little bit more, they would send people that specialized in kind of like anthropological research and just biomechanics and all this stuff, and they sent them to each school, and they would just have a fun sport day, and we would just do different things. I have no idea. I cannot remember what we did that day, but we did a whole bunch of stuff. And then a couple weeks later, our PE teacher would hand out a sheet to every kid and saying, this is the events they think you could be good at. And, so you're kind of like, ooh, okay, this is weird. I don't even know what that is, but okay. So I think mine had, what did it have? It definitely had track and field on it. It had kayaking. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I think it had kayaking on it, and it also had game sports, team handball especially, but also volleyball. And so it's interesting because now looking back as a coach, my skill set was definitely I think they definitely found my skill set there, where I was really, to this day, I'm very impressed how they, were able to figure this out in one day.
Nailed it.
They measure stuff like your wrist and things like that, just to kind of, I guess, anticipate how much more growing you're going to do. They had your parents' data. So, it was a pretty interesting system.
I can't even imagine a kid that age knowing what kayaking is.
Yeah, I know.
You're like, kayaking.
Like, okay.
You probably can't even pronounce it. It's like kaya.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I remember looking at that, and then my mom was like, well, we don't even know where there is any kayaking around here. They only do that up north. And so I remember going to the citywide championships in track and field. And I think I finished in the top 3 in all the events they had. 60 meters long jump and ball throwing. Maybe we run an 800, I can't remember. But I think that's really when they took notice, and we got a letter in the mail. I remember that saying, hey, we would like to invite your daughter to join our training center. She shows, certain skill levels. And at that time, you've been in kindergarten and you've been, your first grade year. You kind of know yourself that you're more athletic than the other kids, because you have all those schoolyard races that you're being challenged to all the time, and just different tests of abilities, and so you're considered the athlete in the group that you're growing up with. So for me it wasn't really a surprise, and my parents were very encouraging. They said, hey, this sounds great, you should go do that, get some of that energy channeled in the right direction. And so yes, that's I don't know, I now that you're saying that, did I have a choice? I remember when I was 10 or 11, they had all the school kids go to like a couple different clubs in town that did other sports. And one of them was our local Olympic shooting club, pistol and rifle and stuff like that. And we got to spend an afternoon there. Every kid got to try out how to shoot and stuff, because it's an Olympic sport. And I remember almost switching sports at that point. I'm 10 years old and I'm thinking, this is so cool. It's like, you're like in the movies. And they did not like you shooting like this. You have to like aim with one arm, and but why I thought about switching? This is so hilarious. I'm 10 years old, because they had these super cool leather jackets that you got, because for shooting, like you have the padded for. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever. So I said to my parents, I really want to do this. And my parents were like, you've already been doing track for like 4 years. Why would you switch? And I'm like, I can do both. So I remember for about 3 months or so, I thought I was going to do both. And I kept swinging by that club and shooting a little bit with them. And on my way to track practice, it was kind of halfway on the way there. I would ride my bike to practice. I'd be swinging by. And then my parents sat me down and said, listen, you have a lot of interests. Like there was a special language school that I could have joined in town, where you went out of your regular school and you went to a school that specialized in language education. I wanted to learn how to play trumpet at the local music school too. And so I had a lot of stuff I wanted to do. And my parents sat me down and said, listen, we really think that it's important that you focus on something. And all these things are very involved. They're not just a couple times a week, just try it out. The coaches there are full-time coaches. The language teachers are full-time. Music school is very intense. Pick one. We don't want to tell you what you should or shouldn't do, but you need to pick one. And that's when I realized, oh wow, I certainly don't want to give up track and field. I was like, this sounds cool, but I guess I need to, they're right, we're practicing 5 times a week. How would I have time to do all of this? And so, of course, I picked track and field. And so that's maybe where my choice was, right there.
Well,
at 10 years old.
we're certainly glad 10-year-old Susan chose track, because I have a feeling if you'd have gone up north and been in a kayaker, I feel like you'd be, unknown to me, a really, maybe Olympic caliber kayaker, or if you'd have stayed in shooting, you'd have been a really good shooter, but I wouldn't have no clue. We'd have no clue. So I'm glad 10-year-old Susan said, you know what, I guess I'll go with track. That's awesome. So at around 10th grade, you start having some injuries, which is, not uncommon necessarily, right? But maybe a little bit uncommon here. You said the coach or coaches saw something in you, instead of just, I'm gonna call it washing you out, like, hey, pat on the back, it was nice try, go pick up that trumpet again. But they saw something in you that was like, hey, you might be a coach. Let's have you help out the other kids. What do you think that was? What did they see?
So this wasn't at 10 years old.
No, 10th
I
grade,
mean,
right?
you have your normal issues, but no, this was when I was 16
Yeah, 10th,
at
10th grade.
so yeah, 10th grade,
Yeah.
10th grade. So in 10th grade, we would have a lot of what do you call it, physicals, where they make sure your vitals were good and just, checking everything. And I kept showing up in there with my knees, and they're like, your cartilage on your patella is wearing down. Like, if you keep doing this at this level, you're not gonna walk when you're 40. That's not a path we want to put you on. Plus, it's only going to get more strenuous. You already have to stay out of some of the lifting and jumping exercises that we need you to do. And so, it was kind of again, it's East Germany. You don't have a choice. They're not telling you, you can still do it. They're like, well, then go back home to your local club and then you can do it there, but not at this level. And so, I was asked to come back and stay at the school, which was very unusual because normally, like, some of my friends that were also cycled out left and went back home to their school system in their hometowns. But they asked me to stay, which, was certainly a difficult situation because your dreams, of becoming a world-class athlete were at an early age. You had to realize, hey, this is not for me. My body isn't able to handle all this.
That's tough.
But yeah, the female head coach at the time said, hey, I want you to come over here and start helping me. And so, at first I just did some paperwork for her. And then she said, hey, listen, we have these kids every year, every event group, even if you're a distance runner or sprinter, we had to pass this like nationwide test where you had to do different events. It's kind of a standard test that we do in track and field: 30-meter, sprint, broad jump, a triple hop, bounding, back overhead, and forward throws. 3,000 meters was usually our standard test that we had to do within 2 days. And the whole entire club, every track athlete there would do the test, and then the results got compared nationwide. And so, they were like, our distance coaches are not really very patient teaching these distance runners and sprinters how to do the throws. How to do those throws, go over and teach them. So that's really how I started, was having my own, the kids that were maybe a year younger than me coming out, and I would teach them how to do these throwing events for that test. And so once I started with that, then they would start giving me event groups to just do more the non-specific work, like maybe have like a volleyball skill training session. So we would do stuff like that to keep things from over specializing too early. We would play a lot of games, volleyball, some soccer, not like full-fledged, like more like a field, like indoor soccer, like a small field, no goalie, just skill-related stuff. We play badminton, we play yeah, just different things. So I would do a lot of that with them. And then also circuit training. They were like, hey, why don't you run them through the circuit training? So I would get like a weekly plan that they had for me, and I would switch from different event groups to just go work with the athletes and help them through that part of their training. And then eventually they would also send me to training camps because we would do a fall, a winter, and a spring training camp. And if the coaches were not available, sometimes they wouldn't be able to go. Those were like more conditioning camps. They would send me along, and I would, be in charge of some of the younger groups, like the 7th, 8th grade, 9th grade athletes, to just take them through a week of training camp. So yeah.
I'm curious, kind of two things here on what you're describing there. One is you mentioned, it's heartbreaking, you're 10th grade and you're being told, hey, your Olympic dreams, because of your body, by the way, not even, that's real tough for a kid to hear. It's like, oh, your own body is breaking down. So one, how did you still decide to stay involved in the coaching, I mean, I could see plenty of 10th graders being like, okay, well, fine, I'm going to get complete screw track. I'm done. I'm out. I don't even want to be around it. So start with that question. Then I have another question as well.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, this was kind of your life. You grew up with track and field. Like that was always the highlight of each day, is going to practice and being around the coaches and the other athletes, and everybody in your age group in the whole country that is doing track and field, especially in the events that you're a little better at. Like for me, it was like javelin throwing. And so, you're really involved. This is your group. And I felt like, for me, I felt like it was a great opportunity, even though honestly, at that time, how you always get asked at ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, like, what are you going to become? I kept telling people that I really wanted to be a neuroscientist, not so much like not the surgery side of things, but just research, because I always found it very fascinating how the brain works and the nervous system. And so that's really what I thought I was going to do. I was going to go to college and become a neuroscientist. And so, really just by, I think, this coach reaching over and saying, hey, I need help, but I also think this would be helpful for you. I want you to stay here. In hindsight, I found out that I was actually very unusual, and that they had to pull a lot of strings to make that happen. And so I was, for me at the time, I was just like, hey, I have an opportunity to stay with my friends, because our school system went through the 10th grade. And then if you planned on going to college, you would go to a college prep school called gymnasium. And so for me, it was much better to just finish out 10th grade where I've already gone to school, versus having to switch again and then switch schools anyways. So they came back in, as I was finishing up 10th grade, they came back and asked if I would stay and also do my gymnasium at the school. And at that point, that's when I chose to say, no, I'm going to go back home. Of course, it's, it was certainly very interesting. And, I got a really good start at coaching there, but it was also very hard for me to be around the athletes that got to continue on. And so, I felt like it was time to move on and, go back and be with my family and my friends. So, yeah, that was an easy time. You've been away for 3 years from your family and just visiting on Sundays, and moving back into my parents' apartment with my brother. He's 6 years younger. So certainly some adjustments to be done. My parents were not used to, they didn't really know what to do with me as far as rules, because I had already made up my own mind every night of what I was going to do with myself. So they were like, we're not going to tell you when to come and go. Just let us know. You live under our roof. Let us know who you're with, and let us know approximately what time you're going to be coming home. So thank God they allowed me to be pretty independent. So I was living under their roof again. And so the local track club, right away, my old club, they came and said, hey, we definitely want you to come and coach. So I went to my 11th grade year and my 12th grade year, pretty rigorous studies to get ready for college, and just coaching every afternoon at my local club.
Yeah, first of all, this is fascinating, Susan. When we, we're on episode 200 and something, so we're over 250 coaches on the podcast here. And what we've quickly found out, that no one has the same path. There is no,
That's
the
right.
normal path. This is certainly not the normal path that we've had. I love this, and it cannot be lost on us. All these things you're describing so far, you're in the 16, 17-year-old age.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, like when we think about today, what 16 and 17-year-olds are going through, just, with society and education and politics, et cetera. And the things that you're describing was a 16-year-old kid not being home, only going home on Sundays. And then how do you, as a 16, 17-year-old, reacclimate yourself back into a family pod and a parent structure? This is fascinating. Okay. So you are doing 11th and 12th grade, rigorous studies to go to college. You're still thinking, I'm going to become a neuroscientist. What do we actually do college-wise and study-wise?
Yeah. So it was nice I was able to stay in touch with some of my friends from my hometown, even so, when you're only there on Sundays, it's not a lot of time to keep those relationships. This is before social media and phones and all this fun stuff. So it's really all just in person. But it was nice. My friends were really good, and without the rigorous training, I was still training. I was still drawing because there were still paths for us to be active and participate in the system without being at these Olympic training centers. So I was still training and competing, just more on my own. After I coached other people, I would still go and train. And then part of the college prep, at this point, I'm applying to school on it's not really, again, it's East Germany. The government paid for everyone's education, so you just
in college.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Well, they still do. When you're European, you don't pay tuition, or you just pay some fees, but you don't really pay tuition.
Wow.
Your first degree is on the government, and then if you try to stay in college too long, then I think they start making you pay for some of those fees. But yeah, so we just did a bunch of aptitude tests, and of course your transcripts would tell somewhat the story of where your skills were best at. And then you were asked to apply for different majors, and the government would, in a sense, try to place most of the students in the university that was nearest to their hometown, just kind of logically saying that probably makes the most sense if that major that you want to do is offered there. If you wanted to go, let's say, to Berlin, the capital, and wanted to go there to a university there, you had to make like a request for that. If they had your major also at your, the university within your state. And so I talked a lot with my friends and my some of my teachers about things at that point, and of course also my coaches at my local club that I coached with. And everybody was really saying to me, listen, we think your coaching is really your calling. You should stay with that. You're a good educator. You have a good sense of what sports can do for people, not just as far as developing as an athlete, but also as a person. You're aware of that. You enjoy being in education, as far as teaching more than just the track X's and O's, And so I decided to apply just for the one university in East Germany where you could become a coach. So all the East German coaches all went to the same college, College of Physical Culture, it was called, in Leipzig, Germany. And you applied for it into a specific sport, to become a high performance coach for a Olympic sport. That's how you applied for it. You could also apply to be in more like physical therapy, or some of those directions were also made available at the time. But that's really every group at that college. You would have a seminar group A, that would be track and field. Seminar group B would be swimming. C would be gymnastics, and so on and so on. And you had to go through a pretty rigorous tryout, like a physical tryout. So you had to go there for 2 days, and they gave you a whole bunch of tasks that they sent to you beforehand that you had to be able to do. And then you would be evaluated on that. You'd have a big meeting in front of professors that would ask you a bunch of questions to see if you were a good candidate to come there, because it was very competitive. At the time when I applied, I think there was 6 people applying for one for each spot that was open.
Wow.
And they would just take 240 total students each year. That was it. So
Oh,
from the low
wow.
country into the high performance and end of the um, major. And so for track and field, they would just take about 25 each year, 20, 25, somewhere between that. And so it's highly competitive. And yeah, you should have seen me work my butt off. Of course, there was a requirement for gymnastics. So here comes gymnastics back in the game. You had to do I think you had to do a floor routine,
Oh,
an uneven bar routine, and I can't remember if it was a vault. I think it was a vault. You had to do
wow.
three things there. You had to go and do a swim test where you had to show that you could do three different swim styles, and you could dive like you had to do a track and field test, which that wasn't a problem. And I think you had to show that you had aptitude in two different game sports. So I think I did volleyball and soccer, I think is what I did. It's hard. I can't remember all of it. And so, they would also give you a physical, and you had to, like I said, have your meeting with the professor. So that's what you did over 2 days. Everybody that applied had to go through that. And out of that group, they would select who got to go to school there. So,
Well,
yeah.
I learned I would not make it into that school. They wouldn't even let me apply. They'd be like, look, go somewhere else, buddy. Holy,
Come to think of it,
man.
when you think about all the coaches out there, I mean, yeah, but it's a different system. We had gymnastics in school, so this isn't just something oh, my parents never sent me. So
Right,
our school sport had a gymnastics component for part of the year. You had game sports, you had swimming.
right.
The East German government made sure that all the kids learned how to swim
Yeah.
in school. And so a little more makes a little more sense that they would expect that from you.
Yeah,
So
where today all that stuff is outside of school. It's club gymnastics, it's
exactly.
swimming, private swimming lessons, maybe at the
Right.
YMCA, but
Right.
not in the school for
Yeah,
sure.
no.
Yeah.
And trust me, man, I hadn't done any gymnastics. So if you didn't go to a training center, like an Olympic training center, you would continue to do gymnastics at school sport. Well, we didn't. We'd occasionally go on a trampoline or
Right.
use like a high bar or some rings as javelin throws. You do some of that. But yeah, I had to really ask my local gymnastics teachers to help me out and ask some of my friends that were gymnasts to help me train for this. It was hard. It was really hard.
And all over 2 days, all of this.
Hmm?
All of this was done over 2 days.
Well, I had to prepare for it because
Right, right, but the actual
they
testing. Yeah, yeah.
literally sent you the elements you
Right,
had to do in gymnastics, and
right.
they sent you I mean, swimming. There's like 4 different swim styles, so you pick three. No butterfly.
Yeah, right.
I also worked as a lifeguard during this time, so my swimming wasn't a problem either.
Right.
I would occasionally swim for the school team. If they had some local championship, I just go and do some breaststroke for them. So none of that was, or I played on our team handball
Mhm.
unit, just to jump in and play at like some of the bigger games because I didn't have time to go to the practices.
Mhm.
But so gymnastics was just really the one that challenged me the most. And thank God I ended up passing all of this. And so I remember when selection time came around, where all the students in your class would find out what major you got selected
Mm.
for and what school you would be going to. My teachers kept telling me you should probably apply for something else, like maybe go back to this neuroscience, apply for that too. And at that point, I was like, no, I want to go to this. I want to go to college to become a coach.
Were they saying for that other college for a backup, like you might not make it,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
wow, really?
Exactly,
And you were
because
like,
they
mm-mm.
said it's so competitive. You had a number of people apply to go to
Right.
the school and they didn't get in, and they had to go with their second or third choice. And I just there were 6 spots you could put, and I just put down the same thing over and over: high performance track and field, high performance track and field.
I don't know that I can make it any more clear.
Yeah, and because no, I was I kind of at that point of my life, I had developed this mantra of don't tell yourself no. I still live by that. I tell my athletes that all the time. There's already enough things in life that tell us no. Don't be the one doing so. At least give it a try. That's life. Life affords you the opportunity to at least try. And that's been my mantra ever since. And so I told them I rather have them not select me, and then I just have to work harder to be selected the following year. And they said, well, I mean, there's nowhere else to go. If you miss the selection for university, you can't apply later to something else. You have to wait a whole year. Do you understand that? I'm like, yes, I fully understand that. I got it. I'm just gonna risk it, and I think I'm good enough to make it in. I'm gonna work as hard as possible to do so, and yeah, I made it in. So I was very proud. So imagine going to school under those circumstances. You had to work your butt off to get in. How proud you are to actually be part of that college. So when you meet any old East German coaches, they all went through that same gauntlet. Everybody had to go through the same thing. So there's a certain unity, even now, when you talk to people that they were either behind you or ahead of you that went through that system. There's a certain connection there.
Yeah.
Maybe like some of the service academies, same kind of.
Yeah, makes sense.
Fun stuff.
So for the sake of time, I do want to move forward a little bit. However, before that though, you said something that really impactful there that I want to unpack here just a little bit. Your mantra that you had from back then and still use today. Don't tell yourself no. Like I love that because like I'll talk to people and I'll be like, you got to work on your inner voice, right? Like sometimes we'll talk to ourselves worse than we would ever allow someone else to talk to us. And for some reason, we just allow it. We allow ourselves to tell us we're bad, we're not good, we're not good looking enough, we're not athletic enough, we're not smart enough. And we would tell someone else that would talk to us like that, hey, you're out of my life. Like, I don't want that. But yet we allow it. Where does that don't tell yourself no? Where do you think that comes from? Was it modeled by a family member? Was it an athlete or teacher you looked up to? When you look back now and you get perspective now, we can have hindsight's 2020. Where does that very important mantra, don't tell yourself no, originate?
Yeah, I think I think when you look at the path, really, let's look at this together. There were all these choices. I think my parents, my dad was a pretty good athlete. He boxed, like at a pretty high level, amateur boxing. He also played soccer deep into his 40s in the local, club league. And I remember going to watch him play soccer over the weekends as kids. And so, he's very athletic. Sports was always in our house. He loved watching anything that was on TV, Olympics, World Championships, winter sports, summer sports, you name it, So my mom, was a elementary school teacher. And so she, had that education background where she said, you got to make your own choices. We're not going to make these decisions for you. There were all these choices along the way, shooting or track and field. And then, later on, I mean, even going to the Olympic training center at, 13, 14 years old, that was my choice. My parents explained all of it to me and said, you don't have to do it. My best friend that trained with me at our local club, she was a really good 800-meter runner. They really wanted her to go too, and she chose to stay home. She didn't want to do it. And, so my parents said, this is your choice. Of course, we don't want to be either telling you no or telling you yes. And then depending on how things work out, you're always going to kind of blame us for it, so you make your own decision. I remember feeling so empowered at, 13 years told that my parents said, you make the decision, you choose. It's absolutely up to you. We support you however you make your choice. And so I think that in hindsight really makes you at a young age say, what do I want? What's important for me? And I think that's where that's coming from, being allowed to have a choice within a very confining system. East Germany, again, you mentioned earlier yourself, there wasn't a lot of choices, but my parents creating that environment to still feel like you had a choice and be allowed to make it. I think that's really where that came from, where I asked myself, what are the consequences of doing it? What are the consequences of not doing it? And I think that's really where that came from. Why would I tell myself no? And so that's, I think, where that developed from. And every time I faced another big choice to make, I think I would go back to that, try it. What's the worst case scenario? You try it and it doesn't work out. At least you gave it everything you got and you took a chance. And versus, being afraid of consequences and not even trying. So I think that's where that came from.
I love that. You just described not, the fear of regret, not having the regret. So I can look back and say, I tried it and it didn't work out. Okay, that's fine. Instead of, I didn't try it. I wonder what would have happened. So I love that you at an early age had that grit, if you will, and that what's the word? The self-responsibility of like, all right, it's going to be my choice, not my parents. And I love that that independence that they gave you at such a young age as well. That's as I think of myself as a parent, I'm like, man, maybe I need to do more of that. I feel like I do well, but I should do more. I love that. Okay, so you made it one of 6 for each slot for this prestigious school. You made it. All that gymnastics and swimming, that's just crazy for me. That's amazing. You made it. You go through college. Where keep us moving forward? Where we going next?
Yeah, so freshman year in college, I'm in Leipzig, which is the city in East Germany that started all these Monday night demonstrations. Because here we are, this is 1988, 1989. This is when the world is changing for everybody in the East. So I'm a freshman in college, and people are demonstrating in the streets every Monday night, and we're being told. At first, they're telling us, if you see you go there, you're out of school. And they're trying to somehow control all this, but it was just bigger than all of us. No one could control it. And, so I remember us going through it, and we came back for spring semester, and things were really starting to look like big changes coming, right? We're looking at the wall coming down in Berlin. We went to Berlin to be part of that, and everybody's just struggling to figure out what's our new guidelines, how are we operating? And so I remember us deciding to skip going to, we had a class called Marxism-Leninism that everybody had to take.
Wow.
Yes. So we decided to skip this, and I remember the older students saying, "Are you guys crazy? You stopped going to the class." There was like two kids went and no one else. We all stopped going, and the teacher was like freaking out, and we're like, "We're no longer coming. You can teach yourself whatever you want to do, but we're no longer showing up." And so it's just wild, that it was a really wild time, and I'm just happy that it went peaceful, because in hindsight we know there could have been all kinds of crazy stuff going on, and we were just in the middle of it. I mean, we were just in the epicenter of that for the East Germany. That city, Leipzig, was where it all originated from and spread throughout the country. And things were just changing super fast, including, our college. We had if you think about it, we had 1,000 students, roughly 1,000 students, right? Because we had 250 about every year, 4-year program with a 50-year option. And we had 1,000 employees. There was 1,000 employees there that ran all the different research entities. So this was also our research hub for the entire country, for all the Olympic sports. They analyzed everything and figured out how to make the East Germans pretty dominant at the time in many sports, outside of all the doping that was going on. I think a lot of the research and the resources they put into it, which isn't often enough talked about, went into that. So
Right.
of course, not a sustainable model when you now switch from a socialist system to a capitalist system, where we went within a year and a half, we dropped down to about 300 employees, and so 700 of our teachers and scientists
Wow.
lost their jobs or had to find something else to do, find new structures, create new entities, free enterprise. Maybe I can have a research institute that's not sponsored by the government, but just sponsored by us. So we went through all of that. It was a really wild time, really crazy. And so, I kept coaching. Well, we kept training. We had to be in a sports club there. So I competed for one of the local clubs in Leipzig, did some training camps, competed at the nationals and stuff. So I continued on with that. And we started coaching. We had to have mentor coaches there in our field. And so I started coaching at the local track club, SCDFK Leipzig. And I got to work with Coach Tischendorf. He actually for a while coached Stoll, the shot putter, and he also coached Martina Hellmann, one of the best East German discus throwers we've had. And so, amongst others, René Sack, I think he was a shot putter. His brother was a pretty good shot putter too. René is now one of our national coaches for women's discus and runs the throwing side of things in Halle at the training center in Halle. He was one of my athletes. He was 13 at the time, and so I got the younger group and I coached them in the events they did, and then Coach Tischendorf would just kind of oversee it, and I pretty much be his understudy for those years. And got to work with Martina a little bit here and there too, just helping out, and then work with the younger group. So that's what I did during college.
You're describing a time in society, specifically there, that is hard to describe. Like, unless you were there, like we can read the books, we could watch some of the video. Video wasn't, as prevalent as it is today, but there is some video, the wall. All of this is going on. And again, we have to remind ourselves of the time frame. You're a 21 year, this is, think about yourself as a 21-year-old, and this, your whole way of living is changing drastically, not small, drastically. At this point, because spoiler alert, you come over to the United States at some point. I hope that wasn't a big spoiler alert for everybody listening, right? She's head coach at Cincinnati. At this time, is there any thought of coming to America, or is that not even in the picture for you at this point?
I think there's so many different streams going on, right? So you're doing college, you're finishing all that up, but the world changed, for us when the wall came down. And I actually was one of the few people that got to travel to the West before the wall came down. Of course, I have relatives that live in the northern part of Germany, close to Hamburg, let's just call it that. And I also had an aunt that lived in Dayton in the United States. So on my dad's side of the family, we had some relatives that were not in East Germany. And my mom and I actually got to go and visit my aunt up north before the wall came down for her, I think it was her 75th birthday or something big like that. And they would come and visit us too. So, we had a little bit of a outside influence from our American relatives and our, West German relatives as well. And, I always paid attention to, particularly the United States. I don't know if you ask me right now to pinpoint why in the world, did I kind of focus more on that even before the wall came down and even before we had any kind of hope of ever breaking loose. I don't know. We covered the United States, North America, in geography one year in ninth grade. We covered that for an entire year. This is the East German system. We also covered the entire Asia and Soviet Union at the time. So you just, you spend a whole year learning all about it, Africa, South America, all that. And so I remember, just being fascinated with the idea of the United States, like why was it founded? Religious freedom, giving people more opportunities, something more upward, forward thinking, not so stuck in tradition like many of the European countries, when you look at it from a historical standpoint. So I just really found that fascinating, the Freemasons, the forward thinkers, deciding to say, hey, let's form a new union and see if we can do this a little better than what we've done so far. So I always felt like, the perspective from the outside looking in was the United States is the land of opportunity and of forward thinking and of, pioneers and, people just trying to do it a little better, do it a little better than what we've already tried before. And I found that very fascinating and intriguing. And I think out of that, also watching the United States, compete at the world-class level, I told Carl Lewis this story that the one time I skipped school was the 1988 Olympics because I had to watch this 100-meter final live. I wasn't gonna watch that later, so I just pretended that I was sick, and of course, all my teachers knew. They were fully aware that, because I think the time change was such that I think it was on like at 10 in the morning or something. So I skipped school to go and watch that. And it was just fascinating, like seeing some snippets of the Santa Monica Track Club and all that kind of stuff. I just found that amazing. So while I'm still studying over there, I'm thinking how, now that everything is open and you can leave, is there a way to go over there and at least experience it, or maybe do like an internship or something? And this is me having zero clue about how anything works over here. So somehow, I can't remember how, in a magazine or something, I'm finding out the name of the guy running the Santa Monica Track Club. And
like Joe Douglas?
Yes, Joe Douglas, exactly. And I'm sending Joe a fax, right? Saying, hey, I'm this young coach and I really want to come over and maybe I can join your club for a little bit, like maybe for a summer or something. I just really want to help out and get experience. And believe it or not, Joe Douglas sends me a fax back saying, hey, this is so cool. I think it's awesome that you're interested. Our system does not work like in Europe, where we have all these clubs and we have all these coaches. It doesn't work like that. It's all about college. So I encourage you to, if you can make your way over here or somehow have a contact, find a college coach that is willing to take you on. We have this thing called volunteer coaches. Maybe you can do that for a little bit and just go to the different colleges and see if you can find something, and best of luck. And this is so awesome. So yeah, I have this somewhere. So, I'm like, oh, okay, colleges, I guess that's what I have to look at then. So, forward to 1992, I'm coming over here over the summer with the organization called Camp Counselor USA. My study course requires us to do some practical coaching. It doesn't have to be in your sport, it can be in anything. So I sign up to be a camp counselor and specifically like a sports instructor. So I come over to upstate New York. The camp's called Frenchwood's Camp of Performing Arts. So they're mostly theater, dance, music, all that kind of stuff. They're all people from New York, Broadway, off-Broadway people over the summer instructing at the camp. And so lots of artsy people. And then here we are. They bring in, they would bring in, college students from all over the world to be camp counselors. So I worked as a lifeguard and kayaking and canoeing instructor, tennis instructor, gymnastics, whatever these kids wanted to do when they were not doing their art stuff. And that's where I met my husband.
Is that right?
Yes,
Oh,
that's where I
wait,
met
wait.
my
Tell
husband.
me he's an artist. He's like a painter or a
He
band
he
member
was
or something.
he was a circus performer. He ran their circus, the circus department at the camp. So yeah,
Hold on. So he's like juggling and trapezing and
not juggling, but yeah, trapeze flying, and he actually is a magician and escape artist, and also hand balancing, like where they pile a bunch of stuff up and you do a one-arm handstand on top. That's
holy
my
cow,
husband.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Track coaching to the side. Now let's talk about this. That's so cool.
Yes, so
Wow.
here we are. Here we have a track person and a circus performer,
That seems
and
appropriate.
it's just perfect, right? So yeah, so we end up, you know, dating, I guess you could say, in the during camp, and then after camp, we got to travel for about 3 weeks to the United States. So I'm with these other European students, and we're just driving a Buick station wagon from New York down to Miami for one of the camp people. And we're just visiting all these different places on en route. And then eventually, I remember, I think I told Coach Shaver this one or once, or Coach Henry. I'm like, man, there's this college out in Baton Rouge. I'm just somehow, while we're doing all these trips, being college students, tourists, I'm like trying to figure out where these colleges are, and I have zero clue. I don't know Division 1, Division 3. I have no
Right,
idea.
right.
This is the early 90s. So I'm like, I think there is a school out in Baton Rouge. How do I get there from New Orleans? So I swear to God, me and one of the other girls, she wanted to come along. We're trying to get out to Baton Rouge to see if someone is there. This is late summer, so maybe no one would have been there anyways, but we missed the bus, we missed the bus to Baton Rouge, so that didn't happen. So then we're up in Chicago, and I'm like, man, I really need to go to one of these colleges. I got to do this. Coach Douglas said I need to find this, so I got to go. So we're in Chicago, and I'm like, hey guys, I'm going to spend the afternoon figuring this out. So I go to University of Chicago in the south side of Chicago,
Yeah.
and they don't have athletics. But I don't know that. So I
Yeah.
go there, and one of the people there is like, hey, hold on, I have an idea. DePaul University, Bill Leach, he likes having international students there, and he has some coaches. Go see him. Here's the address. So I take the L up to DePaul. Bill Leach is not there. It's the summer, right? I go there. I run into someone else. I think softball coach and someone else, and they give me his contact information. So eventually, I end up contacting Bill again, fax and stuff, right? And he invites me over to come and do an internship with him as a volunteer coach. So the spring semester 1993, I come over and I end up being a volunteer coach for Bill, and and so yeah, that's
Susan,
yes.
where is the book? Where is the movie? I mean,
I don't know.
you take
Can
out your you take out your husband, and this is wildly fascinating. You add this magician trapeze artist as the husband, though, and it's, I mean,
I
come
guess
on. Oh,
maybe one day when we're done with all of this and we can reflect. But right now, I'm still way too deep in the middle of it. But yeah, so Ken Harden is on the team at
Did DePaul?
DePaul.
Yes.
Yeah, and Dave Dobeck, he is now the
Yep.
head coach at
Yep.
DePaul, right? So Ken and Dave, and we're like just training, and Dave is a super good 200-meter sprinter, but I almost talked him into becoming a javelin thrower.
Oops.
We're in Lincoln Park throwing javelin because, DePaul didn't have a facility. We're just taking a van out to one of the high schools to practice. And, just it was so much fun. Bill Leach made sure I got to travel, got to go to Mount Sac, see Santa Monica Track Club in person.
Yeah, big. Yeah.
And so, it was a really fun time. My husband, at the time, he lived in Yucaipa, which is pretty close to Mount Sac. So he came out to see us and then came to Chicago to pick me up at the end of the semester. And then I spent the summer with him in Yucaipa in Southern Cal. And then I went back home and finished up my school and came over and then applied for jobs. I slowly, as I worked at DePaul, I discovered a little more how the college system worked and, started looking up schools, understanding a little bit more about it. Also, one thing, I had no idea about NCAA rules. No one ever told me anything about NCAA rules. And I had no idea about recruiting. One of the coaches there, Chris, he would come in the evenings and make all these phone calls over there in his corner. And I'd just be sitting in the office after practice, just kind of finishing stuff up. And I'm like, what is he doing? I had no idea. I had no idea. So then, I go and apply for, Division I jobs, and Ron Mann at Northern Arizona, having a connection with so many of the Germans coming up there to train for higher altitude training. He asked I apply for the job in early fall. He lost Coach Mandrell, got a head coaching job at Miami and left after the school year had already started. So, he's desperately looking for a coach to take over high jump and hurdles. And, I applied for it, and one told me later he went to the German 400-meter hurdles coach they were there for a training camp or something, and said, should I hire this person? Here is the resume. And the guy goes, you will not find a more qualified track coach at that age, like fresh out of college. I mean, she's come through the whole system. That person can coach anything for you. Hire her. And so one brings me in for an interview and ends up hiring me, and I end up coaching at the NAU from 94 to 97.
So before we get to NAU, because it's interesting when you talk about, because you didn't grow up in the culture, you had no clue about NCAA rules, not even NCAA structure, D1, D2, that meant nothing to you, right? No. Before we get there though, when you went out to like Mount Sac, when you were at DePaul, did you get a chance to find and meet Joe Douglas and say, hey man,
never met. I tried, but I think I wasn't aware of the elusive ways of the
Oh man, because I love the idea.
I got to tell I think I got to tell Coach Henry that I almost made it out to Baton Rouge. And then the following year, so like after I'm after I finished coaching at DePaul, my friends came out and we went on a nice little road trip to the national parks. And so we went out to Stanford, actually. And I don't remember. Somehow we got stuck in the sociology department for a long time because they hadn't met any East Germans before. So they had a bunch of questions for us, and like they were just fascinated because we were like three young college students from East Germany running all over the California at the time. And so I think I went out to practice, and I think I might have even met Vin Lanana at the time. I think they were running stairs in the stadium or something. And, I went out and said, hey, I'm trying to find like a GA position or something. And he said, oh, we don't have any GA positions right now. It's just volunteer coaching and stuff. And I'm like, I don't think I can afford that, so just a short conversation, but yeah. This is all a long time ago, 1993. But yeah, thank God one hired me, and I think he was a really good mentor, very structured, very organized. He did a good job, not just having us coach, but also do like educational sessions. Like I remember one year we all did presentations on our events to each other. And so we would practice, and he wanted us to go to clinics and present at clinics, definitely pushed us to get involved with that. So yeah, good mentorship there for my first head coach that I worked for.
Yeah, and I'm at an odd place in my head. I think every coach, Susan, you're in Cincinnati, so the local high school coach should be put on a pedestal. I mean, for what you guys do for young people in the society is immeasurable. At the same time, I love how approachable a Joe Douglas was through a fax. Like he could have easily just not answered, right? I mean, that's
absolutely.
I mean, that's an absolute option he had. A Vin Lanana to talk to you. The DePaul coach to hire to have you as a volunteer. The Ron Mann to hire. I mean, like I wish, like, to me the lesson is, if you're a coach and whether you aspire to be at a level where Susan is or Vin Lanana is or whomever, or you just want, I need an education, I want to learn more, reach out to these people. Not everyone's going to answer. I get that. But like, I hear it all the time of, oh, I can't call Mouse. I can't call Susan. She's Cincinnati head coach. She doesn't want to talk to me. And it's like, oh, first of all, that might be true. I get that. But try. And if they say no, you move on. But it's unbelievable how accessible, how open we are as track and field coaches towards all people in track and field. So I just love this fax to Joe Douglas, walking up on track at the track at Stanford to talk to Vin, trying to get, like, I don't know, Baton Rouge, LSU, let me go talk to whoever's there. Like, I just love that attitude. I love it.
Well, mind you, I had no idea that LSU was any better than Chicago, which didn't have a track team, right? I had no idea. My friends were like, hey, we're going to New Orleans next. And I'm frantically trying to figure out what schools are that have a track team,
So because of that background of growing up, not watching college football on Saturday, that's how you don't know LSU versus University of Chicago, right? That kind of thing.
No idea about football.
You described a little bit of Ron's leadership style, and I love Ron Mann, by the way. What a great, amazing individual. Love him. Get to talk to him every year or so through Facebook, and I just love him to death. You described a little bit of his leadership of, presentations to each other and kind of like really knowing your event and getting out there and speaking at clinics and things like that. How did you, growing up in a culture where there is no NCAA, there is no collegiate sports in the sense of what we have here. So as you get into Northern Arizona and you've got to quickly learn them, how did that process go to actually learning, the NCAA, 500-page manual?
So one told me, hey, you're gonna have to pass this NCAA test, so go study. That was my instructions. So
that was it.
I went to the local library in Yucaipa, and believe it or not, they had the NCAA bylaws.
Wow.
They got it from somewhere. Anyways, no one told me that it's an open book test. No one told me that you only had to study for a couple of the chapters. So I might be the only college coach that ever read the entire dang NCAA bylaw book from front to back. And I tell you, I was like, man, this is worse than taking the bar exam. How do you remember all this stuff? I'm pretty good, I'm pretty good with memorization, and I was like stumped. I made so many flashcards and I was just like, this is not going to happen. I have no idea how to do this. So I get to NAU, and sure enough, within the first couple of weeks, they're like, hey, you have to pass this test. I failed this damn test so bad. Of course I did. I had no idea. I was just like overwhelmed by all these rules and bylaws and all this stuff. And I mean, have you ever read the chapters that are not recruiting eligibility? Yeah. So I think I thought I had to know all this stuff. So then the compliance person at the time at NAU. I think Kelly Woodward was her name. Yeah, she's saying, Susan, it's an open book test. I was like, oh my God, thank God. Because I could just not figure out how in the world everybody else passed this. and then she also told me, hey, just focus on recruiting eligibility, focus on those sections, playing rules, stuff like that. So I passed the test the next time I took it, and I passed everyone ever since. But yeah, holy cow. I had no idea. I think Juan just said you have to pass this test, and I'm like, all right, I better get started.
There's a case for clear communication. Hey, here's the book. Focus on chapter 4 and 5. And by the way, it's open book. So
yeah. Yes. So, but then you asked like, how do you get into it? So I really became a student of United States track and field history. I went to the library and got all the books I could get, previous Olympics, coaching trees, reading stuff about the guys showing up in suits out at Penn and Villanova, and all the coaches, just trying to read up on how the track and field in the United States developed, who was instrumental, NCAA, how did the NCAA develop women's track and field, how did that start to develop? And at the same time, the assistant coaches, I shared an office with Coach Ed Bethea. He's now the head coach at Indiana. We were in an office together, and we couldn't have had a more different upbringing.
we just had Ed on the podcast. So as soon as you said that, I was
really?
like, oh, this
That's
is way
so
different.
Funny. So we had the smallest office ever. Like Ed's desk would be right here, mine would be right next to him, and if one of us had to get up, the other one had to get up too. So that's how tight it was in there. And so, yeah, Ed really kind of took me under his wings. He explained recruiting to me. He said, have some standard questions that you can ask every time. That way, you have like kind of a path through your conversations. And then, just the rest, make it interesting. If you have fun, they have fun. So Ed would come in every day and turn on the radio, and then almost every song that I played, he would ask me if I knew who sang it. So it's just
That's a fun little game.
Also got an education in American music history here, like and so yeah, so we made the best of it. We had some good volunteer coaches and GAs that worked with us, and then our throws coach Anders Axlid from Sweden, he came in, so that helped me a lot. He had been home for a while because of some visa issues, but then he came back for the spring semester. He coached the throws at the time, and he helped me a lot as far as kind of figuring out all these weird things where as a European you're like,
the transition to the
US. Yeah, so it was a really good group of people, and we were, we had a lot more time on our hands back then. So I remember Ed taught me about college football by having me play Nintendo with him. And he wouldn't explain anything. He would just give me the colors, and I'd be like, what are the X's and O's? And he's like, oh, you figure it out. So it took me probably almost a year before I finally beat Ed and Madden.
Oh my goodness.
I always played the Cowboys. That was my
America's team. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course you would. Yeah. This is awesome. I love this. So are you, because we're going to move on from NAU to somewhere else here, but during this time, are you, I'm going to say, committed to being an American college track coach, or is there any, like, there's still a 15% sliver of, I may go back to Germany and be a coach or whatnot, or are you fully in, like, this is my career now?
Yeah, so I think family comes into play when you leave. Like you're a young person, you're like, do I really move to a different country and a different continent? At
Can't
that,
imagine. Can't imagine.
you really just occupied with what if it doesn't work out? That's what you're occupied with, and what you don't understand at that age is what if it does work out? What are the consequences of that? And because you're in a sense choosing to live away from your family, far enough away that you're still involved, but you're not really there. A lot of life events happen without your family and your friends, and figuring out a way to stay in touch with them now is a lot easier than back then, when we had to write letters and phone calls was all you could do. But yeah, that's an interesting choice in itself, to choose a different culture and a different place. But my husband, we got married while we were at NAU. His family is from the Seattle area, so I felt like this was really the path to be on, and as the years go by, it becomes less and less likely that you would be going back. I mean, in hindsight, I've never applied for a full-time job in Germany. I never paid taxes in Germany. I don't really know that part of the system other than from, my friends and family talking about it. And so as far as my work life is concerned, it's really been taking place in the United States.
Mhm.
And now that would be a huge change, to make for myself and for my family. Um, so yeah, I think my path is definitely here, and I'm now reaching a point where I've lived in the United States longer than I have in Germany.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, it'd be as big of a culture shift that you came over, it would be maybe more because of today's technologies and things that are up to speed going back at this point. So you learn a lot of Northern Arizona, you get married while you're in Flagstaff. Where do we go next and why?
So to be honest, I mean, NAU is a very interesting place, and we did a lot while I was there. The men's team finished second in cross country, and we were very successful, winning conference titles there
Mhm.
in the Big Sky Conference. So having athletes compete, sorry, at the NCAA level. I ended up coaching sprint, the hurdles and the not the sprints. Ed coached the sprints, but the hurdles and the high jump, and then that expanded to the multi events. And then I also coached some horizontal jumps at the end. So over the 3 years I was there, got a more expanded role, and just having a lot of fun, having athletes really develop. And
Mhm.
we had a Swedish decathlete, Tommy Serenbrand. When I started coaching him, he was like 6,800 points, got him up to 7,400 points,
Wow.
which instigated Swedish newspapers to write things about this East German coach he had, implying certain things. And
Mm.
it's just structured coaching, and Tommy maturing as an athlete. He ended up being an All-American in the decathlon, and finishing fourth in 97, and scoring 7,800 points. So it was a really nice journey for a young coach to be able to work with some athletes that were able to grow along the way. And one of the things at NAU was uh, I think I didn't understand at the time that you were linked to your head coach, as far as jobs. Because I remember Ron applied for, or was in the running for the Colorado job at the time. And I think he was one of the finalists. And so he started telling us, hey, if I get the job, you're coming with me. And I was just like telling the other assistant coaches, I don't know, why do I have to go to Colorado? I like it here. They were like, you really are not getting this. they're not going to keep you if a new coach comes in, as the head coach, you're not going to stay here. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. That was a big
Right.
eye opener for me, like my first couple years of my career. And so I was like, I want to be somewhere where I can take really good care of the athletes that I bring in, because I started to recruit some very good American athletes and also some very good international athletes. And I felt like at times at Northern Arizona that was a little bit of a challenge with facilities and just things like that. And so when Wisconsin came calling, and Peter Tegen, also a German, was the head coach for the women's team there. He was looking for a field event coach, really, someone that can coach all the field events. I felt like that was a good opportunity for me to make that next step. And so I decided to go and coach at Wisconsin under Peter, and spent 7 years of my life in Madison, Wisconsin. Also really a great place to live, and just had a lot of fun being part of the Badger program, and big time college athletics, football games. This is when Barry Alvarez got the Badgers back to good. And Wisconsin is a very German place, especially
Right.
Madison, lots of German culture. So that was kind of fun too for me. And yeah, I got to coach the field events, and then 1 year I also ended up coaching the sprints and the hurdles. So I coached everything but distance for a year. That was very,
Wow.
very challenging. And had continued success, especially with the multi-eventers, some throwers, making it to the NCAA level. But I always kind of missed a little bit coaching men and women, because at the time we were two separate programs. Coach Nadicom, Coach Napier. We had some really good coaches. Coach Schumacher, he was or is my age, so we were the young assistant coaches at the time. And so like I wanted to go back to coaching men and women, and with Peter, uh, you know Peter leaving eventually at Wisconsin and going out to Stanford, and I wasn't retained. Peter went through an interesting time with the Wisconsin administration, and it was certainly difficult times for us. He decided not to retain me after 6 years of coaching for him. And I stayed in town for a year. I had job opportunities at other locations, but my stepson Patrick was at that time in his senior year in high school, and I didn't want to uproot the family and move across the country. Coach Sheffield at San Diego State wanted me to come out there and coach for him, and I decided to decline that offer because I wanted to stay with my family and not live by myself, and them living in Wisconsin. So I just took a year off from coaching. I still helped out, played a lot of tennis, helped out with the rowing team at Wisconsin. My good friend was the head coach there for the women's team. So I would go on spring break trips with them and do some of their general training outside of rowing. They taught me how to row too. And so, I ended up working at REI for half a year, and just lived more of a normal life. How we always say, oh, I could be doing something else. But I knew I was going to get back into coaching. So I applied for jobs, and yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that, because first of all, you're getting such a compacted, I'm gonna call it air quotes here, education of collegiate athletics, and specifically collegiate track and field, right? Like you mentioned, when Ron was thinking about taking another job, and he's like, I'll take you with me, and you're like, nah, I'll just stay. And they're like, you crazy? You ain't stay. Like you might get a chance if your head coach, but it is not a guarantee that you're staying. That was an education to you. You go through this thing there at Wisconsin, not being retained after 6 years. Now you go into I like how you said it, normal life, working at REI, helping rowing. It all goes back to kayaking and rowing to you. I see. It's always, there's always that component in your life. Was there any, and you kind of maybe said it there, because you said, I always kind of knew I wanted to get back into coaching, but was there any disillusionment in the American collegiate track and field coaching career system? That was a very awkward way of saying that. You know what I'm saying? You could do a lot of other things. You're multi-talented.
Yeah,
Any
yeah.
thought of just like, okay, I'll go a different route then?
No, I think I just, you learn your lessons that, the head coach is really someone that you have to pick wisely, the head coach you work for, because, you're so busy thinking about your career path. You got to think about what theirs is and does that line up with what you're trying to do. The, the lesson here is probably that I wanted to make sure if I get the opportunity to be a head coach, that I wanted to be a very hands-on head coach, someone that's not on a pedestal and I'm better than all of you guys. If you have difficult tasks to accomplish, let me be there with you guys and roll up my sleeves and let's do it together. Also, be a head coach that's not micromanaging their assistants, and by no means neither Ron or Peter did that. Don't get me wrong. They handed things off to you and let you go, but just learning from looking at it from both ends, assistant coach versus head coach. Give people responsibility and then let them grow in it, and take the time to teach them. Doesn't have to be in a formal session. It can just be taking some time while you're at the airport waiting for a flight, or grabbing a bite to eat, but always continue to teach, not just take from them what they have to offer, but also try to give back. Just be a leader that is pretty steady with how you come in every day. Don't let your ups and downs be carried by your assistants. Be open when you're feeling like you don't got it. There's times where it's just overwhelming and it's way more stuff than you can take on. Be open about that and say, I don't got it right now, guys, I need you to help me. And that's hard, especially as a female head coach. You want to prove yourself and you want to prove that you can do it just as good as everybody else. And so you oftentimes want to be tougher than everybody else. And so learning over the years that, sometimes saying, hey, I don't got it either, I'm struggling with it just as much as you do, is much more helpful to you young coaches than pretending you got it all figured out. And in the end, really just create that environment of family and unity, and say, hey, we're going to spend a significant amount of our life with each other. Be supportive, give everybody room to still have their own life and their own friends and family. So don't some programs, they do so much stuff together that it seems a bit stifling as far as still having some chance of your own life. So I try not to do that. We spend a lot of time already. Give them some room to have their own own things in life. But really just have a kind of general sense of camaraderie and saying, hey, we're in this together. Nobody wins unless everybody wins. That attitude. And just really help them to develop, challenge them, say, hey, you're better than this. And that can at times, I think I'm being accused at times of being very pushy, not in a sense of pushing you around, more so it's, I guess the negative connotation could be it's never good enough. Mm-hmm. But I think in my head it's there's always more, and there's that not telling yourself no.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And when you go back to that, I think I asked them to look one of my assistants, Coach Parker, she said that probably best describes it. I ask everybody to look in the mirror and see, am I really living up to the standard that I prescribe myself to, and some days, yes, absolutely. Some days, of course, no.
Right.
And it's not so much that you have to be able to bring it every day. It's go back to challenge yourself to be as good as you can be on a consistent basis. Don't fall into complacency. I think that's part of why we have been able to outperform, in a sense, I guess, I don't know what they call it, your level, I think we're talking finances here and support systems. And I've been told over and over by, coaches throughout the country, hey, you guys are just so exceeding your limits. You guys are, performing have performed for a long time at a much higher level than your support structure probably warrants. And I'm really proud of that. That's a lot of grind. That's a lot of hard work. And just saying, again, why not us, just don't tell ourselves. So, our goals for the program and for, our performance levels have always been higher than what the administration would ask of us. We've always set our own goals in that regard.
So close the gap for us here. So when you were at REI and your stepson's finishing senior year, and I'm getting back to coaching, so did you go from there to Cincinnati?
Yeah.
As the assistant or the head coach?
No, so I was hired by Coach Bill Schneer. He's been here for over 30 years. And I wanted to find someone very down to earth, very personable. Yes, we want to win. Yes, we want to do this at a high level, but also someone that had a really good connection to people. So when I went through the interview process at various places, that's what I was looking for. This time I was really looking for a head coach that, I felt like life outside of just track and field was also important. And so, I was very intrigued by Bill. Maybe best described by a little story. I'm here for my interview, and Bill's taking me around, showing me everything. And a student walks in, and they're just like, not one of ours, just a random student, and they're searching for some office in the building where we were at. And Bill excuses himself for a minute and walks the student all the way out of the office unit to the elevators, takes the elevator down with them, shows them which way they need to go, and then, comes back up and says, sorry about that, but I wanted to make sure they found their way. They looked a little lost. And maybe a small story, but
no, that's a big example of servant leadership. I love that story. That is not being rude to someone who is under him. Like we can see that and hear that in TV and stories and things like that. That was someone saying, hey, excuse me, Susan, this guy obviously needs help. I'm going to help. What a great example of servant leadership. Awesome.
And Bill, and that's just Bill in a nutshell. He always had time to just talk to anyone in the building, or anyone outside the building, really. He'd know a lot of people. There wasn't a city or town we drive into where he didn't know where the diner was and where it used to be. And, you just learned a lot from Bill on just, how to be more down to earth, be part of it, there's high level athletics where, you have to play a certain role and be more than that to attract, people that want to be elite. And that's certainly part of the job, but Bill could do that, but also bring it back down to just, hey, we're all just people trying to, go through this together and support each other and have a good time while we're doing it. So, at the time, that's what I really needed for my next head coach. And, I'm really glad I came to Cincinnati, and I was the men's assistant coach. That's what I got hired at. us, and ended up recruiting all the field events for Bill, and Bill recruited all the track events, and we would still coach across the aisle, coach the men and the women in our event areas. And that was the first time where I really started being just a throws coach. Before that, I've always had multiple roles. So back to coaching men and women and coaching just the throws. So yeah, and I don't know, somehow here we are, 20th year at Cincinnati, just a little bit later.
So
Yeah.
we got about 5-10 minutes left here. One of our main goal here, and hopefully accomplish it. Only you and listeners can tell me if we accomplished uplifting and honoring your journey, which is just fast. I could spend 4 hours. There's still so many questions I have of all the way through. I'm just boggled. I got to learn more about the trapeze artist magician husband too, by the way. Anyway, but our secondary goal here is, we do have tons and tons and tons of current assistant coaches, current first year head coaches, current student athletes. By the way, we have a fairly large audience of 18 to 22-year-olds that are possibly going to go on to become coaches.
Yeah.
Susan, we've learned, I think of words like rigid discipline. When I think about, I'm going to learn something, I'm going to learn something. I'm going to go on, I'm going to read the entire NCAA book. Then, okay, fine, I'll figure it out. Those kind of things. So what I'd like to do is to bring massive values to our listeners by leveraging your experience. Can you talk to us? You gave us a really nice overview of your philosophy of coaching, which has been crafted from Ron Mann speaking into you, obviously coaches back in East Germany speaking into you, Ed Bethea, others, coaching a Dopek, all that stuff kind of amalgamates into
Peter Tagan, not
Peter. Yeah, exactly. So all of that helps amalgamate to your philosophy. What I'm interested in is, can you give us a synopsis of, as a head coach of a big program, now going into, we talked about this, whatever, Power 5, Power 4, I don't know what we are anymore. You're right. Going into the Big 12. Can you bring some value here? Can you talk about how you have developed as a head coach? When you became a head coach for the first time, is certainly different than where you are today. You had to continually learn things, how to hire people, how to let go people, how to mentor people, obviously paperwork, and how do you work inside of an athletic department? Maybe you've been on hiring committees, things like that. Can you talk to us? There's some first-year head coach right now that just can't see 10-year, 20-year down the line. How have you developed as a head coach through this time at Cincinnati?
Yeah, so I think since we're short on time, in my head it's always don't tell yourself no. So that could apply to, can I get into this track meet? Like, we never gone to this, but sometimes you just need to ask. When I came here, we competed very regionally, and I really started to say, hey, if you want to go to this next level, we need to expand. So I would go and ask. At the time we had never competed at Kentucky, which, that's less than 2 hours away from us.
Right.
So I went and asked Coach Weber, I said, can we come to your indoor meets? We're really close by. We have a good team. And that's how we started having that relationship. Don't tell yourself no when it comes to recruiting. We think these athletes are all locked up and they're gonna go to these big schools. We don't know what they're looking for until we talk to them.
That's right.
So don't tell yourself no. They deserve to have your attention. They deserve to have the phone conversation, or maybe in-person conversation, and just see what's out there. Sometimes there's unique paths. It's not always just what you straightforward think it should be. Don't tell yourself no when it comes to your own athletes. There's so much more there than just numbers. How fast can they run for me? How far can they throw? How high can they jump? Many of our relationships are with our athletes and their families. And again, here at Cincinnati, we believe in a one-team culture, and we're a bigger family. And again, we spend more time oftentimes with them than we do with our own families. And so learn what you can learn from every person you encounter. Let them be uniquely themselves. I enjoy that a lot. My coaching staff is very diverse. We all have very different skill sets and different mindsets, and it's so much fun. At times also when you're trying to come to a consensus, sometimes very interesting, but that's a good thing. But yeah, just encounter every day with that attitude of I can learn. There is no set way of how to do this. We find it. I'm always challenging my coaches and myself to at least turn over 15% of what you do as far as your planning, not just like workouts and travel and all that, but also just how you go about your structures and systems. Change it up. Sometimes it will be not better. And you're like, oh, that didn't work. Let's go back to doing it the way that worked better. But you won't know until you try it. So, like just keep learning, stay engaged. Never think you already know everything. Last year I took a master class in hammer drawing because I just wanted to see if there was still any other things, like any new things. So Don Babbitt was teaching it, and I love talking to Don about just drawing in general and training. And so I was like, let me just take the class and see what he has to offer and spend some time focusing on it rather than just the everyday. So just don't stop. Always engage, always find opportunities for yourself and for the people around you to continue growing. That's really what I would advise someone that's in their first year of being a head coach.
I love it. You go back to that mantra from a young kid of don't say no. I love that. I love you don't think you can get into the meat? Well, ask. You don't think you can talk to a Don Babbitt because you brought him up. I love Don. Ask. Yeah, I love that. And then something that's very near and dear to my heart as well is continuous improvement, continuous evolvement, continuous education. You could be forgiven, Susan, with the success that you've had of not going to a hammer clinic and be like, oh, what is she going to learn? She's come on, she's done a lot here in this event. And yet here you are. All right, let me go see what else might be out there. Maybe I've missed something. I'm in my own bubble.
Yeah.
Let's go see what else might be out there that I can come back and change 15% of what I do to make the kids better and make my program better. What great advice there, Susan. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Susan, we're at the end, but oh my goodness, if there's not some kind of a book article, I mean, this is fascinating to me. I mean, I couldn't have guessed your journey at all. Maybe I'd have guessed the Germany part. The accent's still there, so maybe I'd have guessed that part.
Yeah.
But I am just I had such a great time here with you today. I'm so grateful. I know how busy you are. You talked about you were on the road recruiting yesterday. Here you are in the morning still being with us here. I'm just so grateful for your time. I know how important it is, how valuable it is. And so I'm just so grateful for you spending some time with us and being so open and authentic on your journey in this amazing profession. So thank you so much for being here and sharing with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate the opportunity, and time flies when you're having fun. And maybe one day I'll introduce that circus performer. Now this will get you going. Now he is in law enforcement, longtime law enforcement, sheriff's deputy for Hamilton County here for a good number of years. So yeah, let's just see, we never run out of interesting stories at home.
Well, I love it. You have been an absolute blast today. I hope you'll join us next week when we'll continue here on the Gill Track and Field Connections to uplift and honor coaches around the country. I'm not sure we're going to have one as varied. I can only imagine her husband now doing like magic tricks with the handcuffs, right? I mean, that's the logical step there. So, so grateful for you being here listening. And again, Susan, so grateful for you and your amazing journey. Thank you so much, everybody.